Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, this is our second lecture for the subject report writing skills, and just giving you a brief summary of what we discussed in the first lecture. We started with the definition of a report, how a report is defined. Then we moved on to the next fact that reports are used for both internal communication as well as external communication. After that, we touched some types of the reports that might be existing and are in use: formal reports, informal reports, periodic reports, annual reports, monthly reports, and they can be persuasive reports, and they can be simply informative reports, or they can be analytical reports. Then we discussed, dear students, whatever type of reports you are writing, there are some basic underlying qualities that should be present in all those reports. For example, your report should be having all the necessary and desirable information in it. Your report should be having the answer to 5 W's. At the same time, your report should be concise. That means it should not be having anything irrelevant. Then your report should not be having any unnecessary repetitions. Then your reports must be having whatever types of report you are writing. Your reports should be having effective sentences, effective paragraphs, coherence for clear meanings, unity to express the main idea. And all these qualities, we started to discuss how to add up these different qualities in your reports with 7 C's. And in the last lecture, we discussed the first 2 C's completely. That was completeness and conciseness. And we started then the third C, that was consideration. And in consideration, we discussed the first point: focus on you rather than I and we. As you can see on the slide, there were 3 tips in order to add up this quality of consideration to your reports. Tip number 1 was focus on you rather than I and we. Tip number 2 was show audience benefit or interest in the audience. And tip number 3 is emphasize on positive and pleasant facts. While discussing tip number 1, focusing on you rather than I and we discussed the 80% situations in which simply by beginning the sentence with you, this you attitude means attitude of giving respect to the audience, attitude of honoring the audience is added to your reports, is added to any message that you are writing, is added to any communication process that you are initiating. But what was left in this point, there are some exceptional 20% situations in which you attitude or the element of respect is added to your report, not by beginning your sentences with you, but by beginning your sentences with I. What are those exceptional situations in which you should not be beginning your sentences with you and you should be beginning your sentences with I? We would be discussing them one by one. For example, if you are referring to some mistake of your audience, you are the sender of a message, means a report, you are creating a report, definitely your report would be read by an audience. Now, if in that report you are referring to some mistake of your audience, for example, let me make you understand this thing by another example. There is a customer, say, in your bank. You are a manager in a bank and a new person wants to open up an account in that bank. But what happened that on that very day, he failed to attach one required document with all the other documents required for opening up an account. Now the account somehow could not be opened on that day because of the absence of that document. Now one way to say this message, to give this message, negative message to the new prospect customer is, we cannot open up an account for you today. Is it clear? And the second way to say the same thing is, we will be gladly opening up an account for you as soon as we receive the required document. Is it clear? Now, although you have begun the sentence with I, you have begun the sentence with we, but this second sentence is having more consideration in it as compared to the first message, as compared to the first sentence. Next example. Again, you are referring to the mistake of, say again, the same customer. You failed to enclose the check with the required documents. You failed to enclose the check with the required documents. Now the sentence is beginning with you, but again you failed. You are talking to the audience and you are saying you failed. Now by rule of 80% of the situations you have begun the sentence with you, but it is not having you attitude in it. It is having I attitude in it. So in any such situation where you are referring to the mistake of your customer, do not start your sentences with you, shift them to I, and you should be saying it like this. The envelope we received did not have the required documents or the required check, or simply the check was not enclosed, as you can see in the slides. Then if you are getting a bit teased up by repeated questions from somebody, queries from somebody, and you are getting a bit annoyed, now in that situation, one way to answer that person fifth or the sixth time is, one person is coming to you saying that what is this contract saying, one time, second time, then what is this contract saying, then third time, what is this contract saying, fourth time you are a bit teased up and you are saying your contract plainly tells you this, this and this. In Urdu we would be saying आपका contract आपको साफ साफ बता रहा है. That means you are beginning the sentence with you, but here beginning the sentence with you is not you attitude, it is I attitude. You should be shifting it to the word I and saying this sentence, I will be gladly explaining the terms and conditions of the contract to you again. Next example. For example, you want to disagree to somebody's point of view. You are writing a report in which you are disagreeing to the philosophy of your boss. One way to disagree would be, you are totally wrong in your approach. You are writing a report, and in that report you are disagreeing to the philosophy of your boss, and he is the receiver of the report, and you are saying you are totally wrong in your philosophy. Now apparently you have begun the sentence with you, but this sentence is not having you attitude in it, this is having I attitude in it. You should be saying that there are different point of views existing related to this philosophy, and we might be discussing them as well. You might be right in whatever you are thinking, but there are some other colors of the thought existing as well. Is it clear? So these were the different 20% situations, dear students, in which you will not be beginning your sentences in your reports with you, rather you will be beginning your sentences with I. The three situations I repeat: number one, when you are disagreeing to someone, and number two, when you are referring to the mistake of the audience, and number three, you are a bit annoyed and you do not want to show that annoyance to the audience. You will be camouflaging those things by beginning the sentences with I, and there beginning the sentences with I will not be I attitude, that would be you attitude. The recommendation for your report writing is that your reports should be having in them not I attitude but you attitude. If you are receiving or you are adding up this you attitude in your sentences, in your reports, by beginning the sentences with you, then begin them with you. But if you are getting that you attitude in your reports by beginning it with I in the exceptional situations, then begin your sentences in the reports with I. The next point, in order to make your report converted into the one which is having consideration in it, respect in it for the receiver, for the audience, is that show audience benefit or interest in the receiver. Is it not a situation in your everyday life that people would not like to, most of the times, even talk to you if they do not find any benefit of theirs in talking to you? This is a fact. And here, while you are writing a report, you are initiating a communication process, and in which your requirement, you need the feedback. You require the feedback, and that too the desired one from the receiver. So, like in normal life, human psyche is existing, is the same almost everywhere. So your reports, the report which you are writing and for which you need the desired feedback from someone, and that someone is the receiver, you should be showing some benefit of the receiver. That what benefit would he or she be getting if he or she gives a response to you, give a response to you. Let us make this point clear through some examples. For example, if you have opened up a new window in the bank, and one bank simply writes it in this way, you will be glad to know that we are having a new walk-up window open 7 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 8 p.m. every weekday. A new walk-up window, so what? The audience might be thinking that you are opening up a new walk-up window, then what is their benefit in it? Why you are communicating, giving this information of new window to the audience? So you might not be finding any response from the customers, by the way, or from the account holders, if it is the new window of a bank, and if it is new window of a shopping store, then from the customers. The same message, if written in this way, you can now take care of your banking needs at our new walk-up window. It is open with a capable teller to serve you 7 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. Now here you are showing the benefit of the audience, benefit of the receiver, that what benefit are you getting out of this new walk-up window. Here you can expect a response, and a desirable one, from the audience, from your target listener, receiver. If you are writing, say, a persuasive report, and in that persuasive report you want to persuade your boss that he should be hiring 19 or 10 new managers, then your boss would be responding positively only if you can show in your report what benefit would he be getting out of that action of hiring 19 more managers. You would have to show that benefit in the report. Next. Then, the third point, in order to add up consideration to your message, is emphasize on positive and pleasant facts. There was a shop somewhere, and in that shop it was a rule that it used to refund if the customers returned the item within 1 week. One of the customers came back to the shopkeeper within a week with the item that he wanted to return, but that item was not in good condition. Now, one way of saying that thing was, we don't refund if the returned item is soiled and is in bad condition. We don't refund when the returned item is not in good condition. You started with don't. Refund. Something negative. Started with the negative word. Now the same thing can be said as we refund. Focusing on what can be done rather than on what cannot be done. We refund only when the returned item is in good condition. You know, if you are having a glass of water, say, in front of you, this is a glass of water in front of you. Look, a glass of water in front of you. One person would be saying that the glass is half full, and the other person would be saying that the glass is half empty. Now both of them have given the correct statement, but one person has focused on the positive side and the other person has focused on the negative side. For any such thing, if there is an impossibility, there is always the second thing which is possible. Possibility is always attached with impossibility. So you should be focusing on that possibility. When you are saying that we refund when the returned item is clean, you are giving that person telling that person what is possible. What? We refund. So if you want us to refund, bring the item in the neat shape. Although this message is also saying the same thing, that we will not be refunding, but in a tactful way in which you are focusing on what can be done, not on what cannot be done. Okay, some of your employees, say, have demanded, if you're a boss in an organization, first class airfare, first class ticket for traveling from one country to another country. Let us see in the example how one person would be answering the request and how the other person would be answering the same request. One person would be answering, when you travel on company expenses, you will not receive approval for first class fare. You will not receive the approval for first class fare. One person is saying it, you will not. Focusing on impossibilities, focusing on what cannot be done. The other person would be saying the same thing as, when you travel on company expense, your approved fare is for tourist class. No negative word used, no impossibility being shown, no words like not receive. So you are trying to add up what? You are trying to add up consideration to your reports. Consideration to your reports. And why you are adding up this quality of consideration to your report? Because you are initiating a communication process by writing a report where your report will be received by some receiver, and from that receiver you are expecting a desired favorable response, which is only possible if your report would be having these qualities which we are discussing. Whatever type of report you are writing, your report needs to have these qualities in it. Okay, dear students, here we end up with consideration, and now we move on to the next few qualities that your report should be having in it. Those qualities are that your reports should be having facts and figures in them. Then your reports should be having the action put in verbs. And number 3, your reports should be using vivid and image building words. And when you add up all these qualities to any report, then your report gets converted into a concrete report. What is meant by the word concrete? Concrete that creates an impact. And if your report is such that it does not create any impact on the mind of the readers, then how come that you are expecting a favorable response from them? And how that quality of concreteness is added to your reports? Again, this is through 3 tips. Number 1, you should be using specific facts and figures in your reports. And number 2, you should be putting action in your verbs while you're writing a report. And number 3, you should be choosing vivid and image building words in your reports. One by one, we would be discussing these tips in detail, beginning with using specific facts and figures. If a person says, there are 2 types of statements, One is a general and a vague statement, and the other one is a specific, to the point, plus such a statement, concrete statement, which is having facts and figures. This car runs fast. General statement, by the way. If I say Toyota Corolla 1990 model runs at the speed of 300 kilometers per hour, here you have added up facts and figures. And when you add up facts and figures to your reports, what happens? That your report becomes a concrete report. Let us see different other examples. This computer types fast. Okay, which computer? IBM, which model, whatever the model is, types at the speed of 300 letters per hour or minute. I don't know what is it, it's per second or per minute, but you are quoting over here the facts and the figures. Which computer, how many words per second? Add facts and figures in order to get your reports converted into concrete reports. Another example. Student GMT scores are higher. Student GMT scores are higher. Okay, when they were higher, by the way? This was not a concrete statement. This was a general statement, a vague statement. No facts and figures being given. Let us rephrase the same sentence. In 1996, the GMAT, पहले था student GMAT scores are higher. Now you are rephrasing the same sentence. In 1996, the GMAT scores averaged 600 by 1997. They had risen to 610. In 1996, the GMAT scores averaged 600. Here there should be a semicolon. And by 1997, they had risen to 610. Okay. Next example. Eastern Europe is making progress in obtaining investments. Eastern Europe is making progress in obtaining investments. What is the percentage of the investment? And when did they make some reasonable progress? In 1990, investments in Eastern Europe were about US dollars 30 million. Today that figure has increased by 12%. Here you have quoted facts and figures. What you are trying to do, you are trying to make your report a more concrete report, and we are discussing the first sub point in order to add up this quality of concreteness to your report, and that is use specific facts and figures. For that we are sharing some examples with each other. Talking about some person in some colleague of yours who is extremely intelligent, one person is saying she is a brain. General vague statement. Can we make it a bit more concrete? Yes. Her grade point, she was a student by the way, not your colleague. Her grade point average in 1996 was 3.9 on a 4.0 point scale. Now you have quoted the facts and figures. Discussion is that you should be making your reports more concrete, and the first tip in order to get your report converted into a concrete report is add facts and figures to your reports. Move from general to specific, from vague to concrete. Now, dear students, this is a very important point that we are going to discuss related to this quality of concreteness that we need to add to our reports. And that sub-point is put action in your verbs. I think at this level you all are very much familiar with parts of speech. What do we mean by the term verb, noun, infinitive, etc. So we would be discussing directly the point, what is meant by this thing, put action in your verbs. Point number 1 is put action in verbs, not in nouns. Verb should be used in its active shape. Let me explain this point to you with the help of an example. A person says the function of this office is the collection of bills and the compilation of statements. The function of this office is the collection of bills and compilation of statements. Now look at the words collection and compilation. The function of this office is the collection of payments and compilation of statements. The noun collection and the noun compilation, why don't you write the same sentence in this shape? This office collects the bills and compiles the statements. In the first sentence you had hidden the action of the verb collects by getting it converted into a noun shape, collection. Second, the verb compiles. In the first example you had simply hidden the action of the verb compile by getting it converted into a noun, compilation. So use the verbs in their active form. Do not hide the action of the verbs in the shape of the nouns while you are writing your report. Now look, if I would be changing the first sentence, the function of this office is the collection of payments and compilation of statements. If I want to get this sentence converted into past tense, I would be saying the function of this office was the collection of bills and compilation of statements. If I want to get it converted into future, the function of this office will be the collection of bills and compilation of statements. The words collection and compilation, they remained as such in all the tenses: future, past, past perfect, continuous. They are fixed in their noun shape. That means the active form of the verb is fixed because of getting the verb converted into a noun shape. The recommendation in order to make your message more, make your report more concrete is use the verbs in their active shape. Do not hide the action of the verbs in nouns. Then the next example, Professor ABC will give consideration to this report. The word consideration derived from the verb consider. When you are having a verb existing in place of a noun, why you are using the noun? Why don't you say Mr. ABC will consider this report? Okay. The proposal has requirement for 4 documents. The word requirement. Why don't you say the proposal requires the 4 documents? The next example. Students held the meeting in the office. Why don't you say students met in the office? We are discussing point number 2. In order to get our messages converted into, our reports converted into more concrete reports, the first point was use specific facts and figures, and the second point was that put action in verbs, and the subheading was put action in verbs, not in nouns. Now we'll be discussing the second subheading, put action in verbs, not in infinitives. The duty of secretary is to check all incoming mail and to record it. Look, is to check and to record. Now whenever you use this word to before any verb, the verb always is fixed in its infinitive first form. After to, whenever you will be using the verb, you cannot use it in the second form, third form or continuous form. You will always be using it in its infinitive form. That means, again, by the use of to, you are fixing the shape of the verb in its infinitive form. Again, this is crippling the action of the verb. You are hiding the action of the verb, which is not recommended if you want to get your reports converted into concrete reports. You can write, the secretary checks and records all the incoming mail. The secretary checks and records all the incoming mails. What you're trying to do, you're trying to put the action directly in verbs, not in infinitives. And by the use of the word to in the beginning of the verb, you are doing what? You are hiding the action of the verb in the form of an infinitive. Similarly, the action of the verb is hidden if you are using passive voice. Let us see through the examples how. One sentence says in active form, I eat food. Now the adjacent passive sentence for this active form is food is eaten by me. Food is eaten by me. Just have a close look, dear students, on the slide. Then I ate food. The passive form is food was eaten by me. I have eaten food. Food have been eaten by me. I am eating food. Food is being eaten by me. I had eaten food. Food had been eaten by me. I will eat food. Food will be eaten by me. Now look, in the active sentences, the shape, look, just have a close look at the shape of the verbs. Eat, ate, eaten, eating, eaten, eat. The same verb taking different shapes with the tenses, but there in the passive voice, in all the sentences, the verb is fixed in its third form. Eaten, 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 eaten. So passive voice fixes the verb again in its third main verb, in its third form. Again, you are hiding the action of the verb, which is not recommended. You should not be hiding the action of the verbs either in noun form or in infinitive form or in passive voices. That would be negatively affecting the concreteness quality of your reports. The expectation from you is to write a concrete report. You are writing a report, which the definition of a report is impartial and objective collection of facts. Even its definition requires the use of fact, the definition of a report. Now, dear students, you are trying to make your report a concrete report in which we discuss the first 2 points. Number 1, that put use specific facts and figures, and then put action in verbs, not in nouns, and not in infinitives, and not in passive voice. Here is the third tip and third sub point in order to get your reports converted into concrete reports, and that is choose vivid image building words. Vivid image building words. Again, repeating the same point. You are writing a report and you are initiating a communication process, and for that communication process, while you are writing a report, you require the feedback. How would you get the feedback if your message or report is not staying in the memory of your receiver? If you want your message or your report to stay in the memory of a receiver, you should be using vivid image building words. I think you all very well know the tagline, "Diyo na piya to kya jiya? Jahan dalda wahan mamta." Mamta has nothing to do with dalda, but image building is done. Diyo na piya to kya jiya? Diyo has nothing to do with life, but they have created such comparisons and they have created such images that stay longer on the memory of the receivers. Similarly, when you are writing a report, you should be using such a language which builds an image on the mind of your receiver, and that would stay longer in the memory of the receiver. And anything that touches your memory, anything that creates an image on your mind, no doubt you automatically, unconsciously or consciously, would be giving a response to that thing, and that is something that you require out of your report. One person says, "I felt very good." Another person says, "I felt like a cool breeze blowing." Both of them have said the same thing, but one have said it in a mechanical way, and the other person has said it in a beautiful way, creating an image on the mind of the receiver. Then, another example, your report is advertising a product. One report is advertising the same product in one way, and the other report is advertising the same product in another way. Just listen to me, have a close look on the slides, and simply imagine and think what is the difference between the two. Question number 1. It's talking about the double chins, by the way. I think, dear students, you know what is meant by double chin. Chin. People who are obese, fat, are having double chin. The X product is basically used, there's a product to remove this double chin, and one report is advertising this product with these sentences, and the other report with the other sentences. Listen to me. Your double chin will be removed if you use X products as directed. And the other report says, if two chins quarrel for a place in your collar, then X product will help settle the argument. Only one chin will remain if X is used as directed. Now, can you see, chins do not fight with each other, by the way, but such image is created as if the chins are some living creatures fighting with each other in the collar for a place. An image is created on your mind. It will stay a bit longer in the memory of the receivers, and a better response is expected from the receivers if the report that was written or created is having the image building quality, or indirectly I say that, rather directly I say that the report is a more concrete report. Okay, dear students, we have added up this next quality, concreteness, to our reports. Let us move to the next quality. What else is required for a report? Your report should be a clear report as well. Your report should be having one more quality in it, and that is the quality of clarity. What is meant by clarity? If I say the sky is clear, what is meant by clear? That I can see the whole sky. There are no patches of the clouds hiding it from some side. The entire sky is open in front of me, clear in front of me. The road is clear. There are no obstacles. There are no barriers on the road. But if the message is clear, that means it is easily understandable. If the report, I say that a particular report is a clear report, that means the report is easily understandable and is not having any ambiguity in it, it's not having any confusion in it, and it is well understood by all the people who either are reading it or hearing it in the case of the oral reports. So how to add up this quality of clarity to your reports? What should be done? 1. Often people think that if we add up difficult words to whatever piece of writing we are writing, whatever style of writing we are adopting, then it will show that we are a bit more sophisticated and educated. Whereas the fact is exactly opposite. The recommendation is that you should be using short, familiar conversational words. There are 2 tips. Number 1, for adding up this quality of clarity to your reports is choose short, precise, concrete and familiar words. And tip number 2 is construct effective sentences and paragraphs. We will be discussing in detail number 1, the tip number 1, choose short, familiar and conversational words. You are writing a report for somebody who would be reading that report. You might be having 100 people reading that report, or 1000 people reading that report. Or if it is an oral report, you are giving a demo on an oral report, then you might be having 1000 people sitting in the audience. Then do you think that all the people sitting in your audience are PhDs? Or all the people even sitting in your audience are master's degree holders or bachelor's degree holders or even matriculate? You might be having illiterate people sitting over there. And by the way, there are many words in this language which even PhDs do not know the meaning of. And there is no use of using difficult words in your report. If you are using a report, difficult words in your reports at the cost of the understanding of the audience, then do you think you would be getting the desirable response from the audience? The audience could not simply understand what you want to say just because they could not understand the meaning of the words you have used in the report. You used 2 difficult words. So they would be simply guessing, this might be the meaning of this report, this might be the meaning of this sentence, this might be the gist of this paragraph. And you would be, the guess might be wrong and right. It might be a right guess, it might be a wrong guess. And what desired feedback are you expecting out of any guesswork? A wrong guess will never give you the desired feedback, will give you the negative feedback. And you cannot afford it while you are writing a report. You need the desired feedback. So the recommendation is use short, familiar, conversational words. Now, let us go for some examples. One person says, after the perusal of the pertinent data, the conclusion is that a lucrative market exists for the subject property. How many of you understood what this message is saying? What is the meaning of the word perusal? What is the meaning of the word pertinent? What is the meaning of the word lucrative? Few, very few of you. Let us rewrite the same sentence again. The data we studied shows that your property is profitable and in high demand. Now, dear students, this sentence is quite clear because it used short, familiar and conversational words. Okay, there was a National Bureau of Science somewhere, and the function of that National Bureau of Science was that it used to welcome any new discovery by anyone with any liquid, with any powder, with any acid, with any base. Any layman could write to that National Bureau of Science. Now a plumber wrote a letter to National Bureau of Science that I found that hydrochloric acid is very good in opening up the closed drains, the blocked drains. Now National Bureau of Science wrote back a letter to that plumber, and let us see what that letter says. That letter says, the efficacy, now dear students, keep in your mind that National Bureau of Science is writing a letter to a plumber, and what is the education letter of a level of a plumber? You know it very well. Efficacy of hydrochloric acid is, again, the National Bureau of Science is writing a letter to a plumber. The efficacy of hydrochloric acid is indisputable, but the corrosive residue is incompatible with the metallic permanence. Efficacy, indisputable, corrosive, residue, incompatible. How are you expecting out of a plumber to know the meaning of these terminologies, residue and corrosive and incompatible and efficacy? The plumber thought that National Bureau of Science has accepted my new discovery, and he wrote back a thank you letter to National Bureau of Science. Thank you so very much for accepting my discovery. National Bureau of Science wrote back a letter again to the plumber. Let us see what did they write now. We cannot assume the responsibility for the production of toxic and noxious residue with hydrochloric acid and suggest you use an alternative procedure. Production of toxic, noxious residue, alternative procedure. Plumber again thought that they have again accepted my discovery and again wrote back a thank you letter to the National Bureau of Science. Now third time the National Bureau of Science returned with the third letter, and that was, do not use hydrochloric acid, it eats hell out of the pipes. The point is this, why it happened, why National Bureau of Science had to write it thrice, and third time they had to stoop to the abusive sort of language, hell out of the pipes, a crude, informal language, just because in the first two letters they used difficult words, and that message was not understandable by the plumber whose educational level is a bit low. Don't you think it was a wastage of time? Yes, it was a wastage of time. Don't you think it was the wastage of resources? I think we write on a piece of paper. Paper is a resource. Electricity is used if you're taking the print out. Then it's the wastage of credibility as well. The plumber might be thinking, they say one thing at one time, another thing another time, and yet another thing at another time. Just because of one reason, the use of the difficult language, the use of the difficult words. So in your reports, you cannot afford this. You are recommended to use short, familiar and conversational words in your reports. Dear students, we are trying to help ourselves in getting our reports converted into clear reports. And for that we discussed point number 1, the choose short, familiar and conversational words. Now we are moving to the next sub point, and that is construct effective sentences and paragraphs. When we talk about the term effective sentences and paragraphs, what we are talking of, that our sentences should be having and our paragraphs should be having some nominated qualities in them. First of all, we would be discussing what should be the length of a sentence and what should be the length of a paragraph in your report. What is a sentence made up of? A sentence is made up of words, and when we are talking of the length of a sentence, we would be talking of the number of words in a sentence. Have you ever gone through any such books which are having unnecessarily long sentences in them, and each sentence comprises of say 7 lines? You begin with a single word and single idea, then the sentence moves on from one theme to another theme to another theme, and yet it ends at the 7th line where you have already lost the meaning or understanding of the first 3 sentences. You are losing the attention of your audience with unnecessarily, unreasonably long sentences. There must be some standard recommended length for your sentences of the report, and that recommended length is 17 to 20 words in a sentence. We're talking about the upper limit, remember? It can be any lower limit. I eat food, just three words. 17 to 20 words. It can exceed up to 30, but if it touches 40, then divide that single sentence into 2 sentences. Length of a sentence. Now length of a paragraph. I was trying to tell you what is the difference between sentences and lines. Just have a close look at the screen, dear students. It is written, life without faith, courage, honesty, values is like a fish without water, hope and energy. Now this is a single sentence, but if you count the number of lines over there, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 lines utilized for this single sentence. So when we were talking of the length of a appropriate recommended length of a paragraph for a report, we would not be talking of the number of the sentences in that paragraph, we would be talking of the number of lines in a paragraph, and the recommended number of lines is 7 to 12 lines for the intervening paragraphs. There are one paragraph is the beginning paragraph, the other paragraph is the ending paragraph. The recommended length for the beginning and the ending paragraph is different, and the recommended length for the center paragraph is different. The recommended length for the beginning paragraphs is 3 to 5 lines, can move up to 6 to 7 lines. For the center paragraphs is 7 to 12 lines, can move up to 15 to 20, but if they touch 30, divide the paragraph into 2 paragraphs. I repeat, for the beginning paragraph, the recommended length is 3 to 5, can move up to 7 lines. For the center paragraphs, the recommended length is 7 to 12 lines, 7 lines, 9 lines, 12 lines, can move up to 15, but if it touches 30, then divide that paragraph into 2 paragraphs. We are trying to do what? We are trying to get our reports converted into more clear reports, and in it we are trying to learn one thing, how to construct effective sentences and paragraphs in a report. And for creating effective sentences and paragraphs in a report, the first criteria that we are discussing, that we have discussed, is the length of the paragraph. Next, we move on to the next point in creating effective sentences and paragraphs, and that is your paragraphs and sentences should be having unity to express the main idea. Now, what is meant by this term unity? I'm going to read out a sentence in front of you and just try to guess whether this sentence is having some unity to express the main idea or not. I like Minar-e-Pakistan. I like apples, and Minar-e-Pakistan is in Lahore. I repeat the sentence. I like apples, and Minar-e-Pakistan is in Lahore. What are you talking about? Are you talking of Minar-e-Pakistan, or you are talking of apples? What is your main focus? Apples on Minar-e-Pakistan? Your sentence is not having the unity to express the main idea. It shows the disparity of ideas, the confusion. There's a confusion in the sentence. So what would you be expecting from the audience whom you are giving these sorts of sentences in your report? You can either say that the architecture of Pakistan is unforgettable and Minar-e-Pakistan is in Lahore. Now these are two related ideas having the unity to express. Your sentence should be having either a single idea being discussed in it or two or more related ideas being discussed in it. Or you can say fruits are very good for health and I like apples very much. Two related ideas. Similarly, this was an example of having unity to express the main idea at sentence level. Now we would be moving to have the unity to express the main idea at the paragraph level. Again, health is a great blessing of Allah Almighty. One should be taking care of the health by taking proper diet, by taking proper sleep, by going for proper exercise, and one should be praying 5 times a day as well, as praying 5 times a day no doubt improves automatically the health of an individual. The architecture of Pakistan is really unforgettable, and Minar-e-Pakistan is in Lahore. When I moved to the top of Minar-e-Pakistan, I felt like flying above the globe, and I felt like a bird who was moving from one side to another side. That moment of my life is really worth remembering. Now this was a single paragraph. It started with health is a great blessing. It moved on to the discussion of sleep, exercise, diet, then suddenly came Minar-e-Pakistan. Now the point is this, the question is this: what you want to discuss in this paragraph? Is it your health that you are discussing, the health of an individual that you are discussing, or you are talking about the architecture of Pakistan or Minar-e-Pakistan? Your paragraph is not having the unity to express the main idea. There is a confusion in that paragraph, and the confusion is created just because your paragraph is not clear. It is having two different ideas being yoked together by force at a single place. So such paragraphs do not create any impact on the audience. So the recommendation is, in order to create effective sentences and paragraphs, number one, I told you about the recommended length, and then I told you about the next quality that your paragraphs and sentences should be having, and that is unity to express the main idea. Dear students, we will be ending up over here today's lecture, and we'll be continuing from this very point where we'll be discussing the other qualities that should be there in your sentences and paragraphs in order to make them more effective, in order to get your reports converted into the ones which are more clear and concrete and are having more chances to get you back the desired feedback. Thank you so very much.